Hello, welcome to today's IAB Europe webinar. My name is Alison, I'm an Executive Business Advisor at IAB Europe, and I'm going to be your moderator during this session. Going on from the publication of the IAB Europe white paper on native advertising and content marketing, Europe's hosting a series of webinars that dive deeper into this topic. My apologies. In fact, this is the second of the series. The first one was entitled Building More Meaningful Relationships with Consumers Using Native Advertising. So today's webinar is going to showcase the development and implementation of online native advertising and content marketing across 5 specific European markets. If you want to download the white paper I just referred to, you can do that from the IAB Europe website. Today's webinar is going to last about 45 minutes, so 30 minutes for presentations and a 10-minute Q&A. You'll be able to watch and share the recording after the webinar. That will go up online a couple of days later. Before we start, let's just take a moment to ensure that everybody's familiar with the control panel and the WebEx system that we're using today. So firstly, you should see a control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Minimize the panel by clicking on the double arrow in the upper left corner. Expand the panel by clicking the same button. Just a moment to practice that. Also, please note within that there's a chat panel and a Q&A panel. So you submit any technical queries to the IAB Europe team via the chat panel, and we'll on to those. And can submit questions for the speakers using the Q&A panel located near the bottom of the control panel. So it means that the presenters would have a chance to answer your questions live as we go along, or perhaps at the end during the Q&A session. Let's see how we progress. And if you need help during the session, you can raise your hand by clicking the red exclamation mark icon just above the panel. So just to clarify, technical issues submitted to us via the chat panel and questions for the speakers in the Q&A panel. Okay. So let's move on to introduce today's presenters. So we have 5 presenters for today. I'm delighted to introduce Mayra, who's Marketing Manager at IAB Ireland, O'Brien, Head of Industry Programs at IAB UK, Lou Garcia, Chairman of Content and Native Advertising Group at IAB Spain, and Head of Digital and Tech Practice at Ketchum, Vera Sidanmanlaka, Chairman of IAB Finland Native Advertising Task Force and a Native Advertising Professional with Arledet Oy, and Oma Ozene, Chief Operating Officer and representing IAB Turkey. So I'd just like to introduce you, before we kick off with the speakers, to the Native Advertising White Paper. Of course, actually, in the first instance. So in 2016, IAB Europe created the Native Advertising and Content Marketing Task Force, which to help publishers, agencies and advertisers understand native advertising, work with it better, and use content marketing opportunities, develop good practice through harmonisation of local market, business and policy initiatives. So just move on and paper. So the white paper outline elements that come into play in native advertising and content marketing, and provides insight into how native advertising can build better advertising experiences for consumers and more meaningful relationships. That develops the discussion we had in the last webinar. It also provides guidance for key considerations for creating and distributing native advertising, and we're going to start to jump to those areas today. The task force has also developed a guidance document on how to comply with EU rules applicable to online native advertising, and find those on our website. So first of all, let's talk briefly about pan-European definition of native advertising. So the task force set out to define native advertising and content marketing as a starting point. And firstly, they reviewed the definitions implemented at local level, and it was clear that there was a lot of variation across markets and across stakeholder groups in terms of understanding of what native advertising and content marketing was. So working with the national IABs, the task force decided to split the definition to hear about these two areas of native advertising, the distribution of ad formats and secondly, content-based advertising. And the force also agreed that the term content marketing in general, so covering also brand-owned content such as websites, etc., to refer to the specific practice of content-based advertising from which media owners earn revenue. So that's how we arrived at our definition that you have here today in front of you. To hand over to May to outline the native advertising and content marketing landscape in Ireland. Welcome, over to you.
Thanks very much. So yeah, more than happy to share sort of a brief snapshot of native advertising content marketing landscape here in Ireland. So first of all, I'm just going to show you our recent, the H1 2016 online ad spend study that we do in conjunction with PwC. And our total online ad spend for that period, that 6-month period, was €216 million. It was a growth of 33% on the same period from the previous year. And just one kind of headline I suppose to put out from that study in particular was that it was the first time here in Ireland that mobile ad spend overtook desktop. So mobile ad spend was by €1 million. So mobile ad spend was 108.5 million, and desktop was 107.5 million. But both for mobile ad spend year on year, 67% in that 6-month period, or 6 months to 6 month year, and 11% for desktop. So mobile growing much faster speed. So just to show you that headline on it. Jumping into native advertising, and we measure it across both desktop and mobile. Most of our measures in the ad spend study are across desktop and mobile. So native in that 6-month period was 36.6 million. We started measuring native in H1 2015, so it's the first time we've been able to put a growth amount on it. So the revenue was up a massive 109% on the H1 2015 study. And now native is representing 39% of the total digital display market. So in the orange box there, it shows you the definitions that we used in that study for native. And I'll show you some more on this. Now we are working towards the definitions that Alison just presented there, the European Task Force definition. So we are working towards that. And we only report native ad spend in the aggregate, but we do ask our participants to give us across these headlines. So the native advertising includes in-feed publisher-controlled content, so that'll be a lot of the content with our Indigenous publishers. It includes in-feed advertiser-controlled content that would include a lot of some Indigenous publishers and the likes of Facebook, and then discovery recommendation units, so your Outbrain and your Taboola, and then customized innovation formats is just that really, it's the more bespoke creative native formats that are there. So as I said, we were using for H1 2016, but we report just the native or the aggregate amount for native. So moving on to our priorities. So we set up Native Council in 2014, and some of the first tasks were around defining native and figuring out measuring the size of native in our market, which we did through the ad spend study. And our other priorities at that point were, one of the first things that the council did was produce a native or a guide to native, so our native council guide to native at the end of 2015. And I'll show you some bits from that now in a few minutes on our website if anybody wants to look it up as well, was to agree our definitions and also, most importantly, our disclosure principles, just in the interest of transparency for native advertising in the market. We launched and are still running a native breakfast series, and the way that runs is that it's always a brand, it's always an advertiser that presents, a market manager, brand manager, who work that they're doing in Native, what's the good, the ugly, what they're learning, what's worked well, and how they manage it internally as well. So very well attended breakfast and very interesting as far. So there's just some of the companies who've presented with us this year. So Carlsberg, KBC Bank, Volvo, and Bord Gáis, which is a utility gas company here. So quite different sectors, and that's our idea, is to keep going with different sectors and get a cross section of case studies on that. So we also include presentations at annual conferences, any other events we have. So Media have presented, Maximum Media have presented, who have Joe.ie, Her.ie, Joe.co.uk actually as well. They've launched into the UK. Comic, which is an agency here, Tesco have presented, and numerous others have Native. Our own digital upfronts this year as well had quite a decent Native team running throughout it as well. So, and then Native workshops. So always a need for and a constant need and an appetite really training here in the market. So they've been the priorities for 2016 around that. So just to jump to the Native Guide just briefly, I'm just going to show you a few bits of it. It's all on our website. We've quite simple, it's quite a short guide. And our definition, our overall definition for Native is quite short there. You can see at the top that it's paid for content that is relevant to the consumer experience, is integrated with the surrounding content, and is not interruptive. Then we go a little bit more detail on the different types that I've mentioned that we use for our ad spend study as well. So from your discovery recommendation units and so on. And there's just a simple table there with a checklist of what they are. So again, it was to keep it very visual and very simple. So that was our aim on it. And the disclosure principles I mentioned. So in our guide, we got our publisher members, or we invited, and they all accepted, our publisher members to sign up officially to these disclosure principles. So it's the simple principle of transparency that Native advertising should be clearly and prominently labelled and readily recognisable as an ad or paid for content. And the identity of the advertiser should be apparent to the reader in the advertisement or paid for content. They signed up to that. And the examples you can see below were all local examples, show the different types of Native advertising and local from here. So I just thought we'd take a look. We meet a lot of advertisers. Obviously, they come to a lot of our events, and they're in touch with us a lot. And these are the themes that are coming through all the time with advertisers. So it's what Native gives them. It allows them to have deeper engagement with readers, users, viewers. It gives them better product awareness, access to audiences, and it's sort of more freedom, I guess, to engage and really interact with customers. And they bring products to life. A lot of them are using them to bring sponsorships to life, and obviously just campaigns in general, just to add a layer to them. But there's a but. They're all very careful. You have to know your audience, know exactly who you are talking to, and be clear on that, depending on the campaign that you're doing. And that obviously implications for location, or who you do your Native for your content marketing with. Put your reader and viewer with value and be transparent. Very important. One of the things is big, and this is what advertisers would say to us, having learned this, I suppose, over time, is to bring media owners and other partners in as early as possible. And that feeds back into your webinar from last week about relationships, very, very important. And measuring against KPIs in a variety of ways. So not just one way, not just looking at click-through, or not just looking at social interactions, looking at dwell time, looking at shares, and quite rich data that they can get on that. So one of the things I suppose advertisers here would say as well is that, there was a lot of kind of dipping into Native initially, the hot topic here, but publishers are really driving a lot of it here with really good solutions, with really good creative teams, creative tools, the studios. There's a lot of that going on, and it's really, I think, becoming a little bit easier for advertisers to do more. So that's our priorities on the Native Council for 2017. So raise the standard, and our mantra is let's do Native better. So that's just focused on the year. One of the things is to provide a toolkit for Native, and again, your webinar last week covered some of this around the project management, around really clear roles and responsibilities, around the time. Do you need a sign-off? It's one of the issues that advertisers have raised with us here is internal sign-off can be an issue with content pieces. So building in time for that. And publishers and advertisers having a relationship helps in that a trust builds up between the two. Measurement against campaign KPIs, so measurable case studies. We're looking for case studies all the time, success stories, learning stories, whatever they may be. One of our priorities definitely is to encourage brands to commit more to native in terms of doing more series rather than once-off pieces. And the idea being that, again, the relationship can be built up and it's just much more effective. And that's what advertisers are telling us, and publishers, of course. We are having discussions on social influencers, fake news, opportunities and challenges for publishers on that, where that all fits in. In terms of that, really, a lot of our publishers would see it as a good thing for them in terms of them having and being trusted partners for advertisers here. Maintain what worked from last year, so the breakfast series, the workshops, speakers events, and promote and drive in our market IAB Europe publications, white papers, which is brilliant for us to have that resource. And, back to what I said originally about our definitions, ensure our definitions and best practice in line with the European and global IABs. So that's for us. That's all. I'm happy to take any questions or queries at the end or discuss further with anybody. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maeve. Thanks. Super. I'm going to hand over to Claire now. Here. Are you ready, Claire?
Yes, I believe I am. Hello, everybody.
There you go.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine, Claire. And you've got control of your slides, yeah?
I certainly have, yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, any questions, just let us know, okay?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take you through really what's happening, a kind of a market snapshot for what is happening with content-based and native advertising in the UK. And the numbers that I'm showing you at the moment are for the first half of 2016. We're in the process of collecting H2 2016 right now, and full year will be announced at the mid to end of April. I can't remember the precise date. So these are the numbers that we're looking at. And I have a feeling that we've lost the slide here. Out the slide. So I'll talk everyone through what this means up front. Originally, the total ad spend for H1 2016 in the UK is 4.777 billion. And that's for the first 6 months of the year. And of that, display advertising accounts for 33%, which is a growth of 2 percentage points, but from the previous period in 2015. If we then look at how that content display breaks down, which is the image you're looking at now, content and native as a measured discipline is actually sitting at 29% of display, and previously it was 23% of display. So we're seeing very steady growth there, and I want to take you through some of the areas where we see that growth coming from. The other numbers to look at on this breakdown of display is video at 474 million, which is a very similar figure to the 451 million. If you consider that is the first half year, and additionally the second half of the year produces higher ad spend, it is quite likely that we will be approaching the 1 billion mark for spend across content and native, which includes in-feed. I've actually got a breakdown a little bit later on for you to know how we define and measure in this area. But also, look, video is accounting for 30% against content and native 20%. And it's not just a correlation, but there is some interesting video numbers that I think we need to be considering when we're thinking about what is content, what is native in-feed, and so forth. So as we break down, very much as Maeve was saying in Ireland, these first numbers in 2016 for the first time see mobile display overtaking desktop display by some serious margin here, and you see the total numbers, nearly 1 billion mobile display at 802 million versus desktop at 762 million. That's overall display. What is interesting is what is driving those numbers, because if we look at content and native and where the growth is coming from, so overall we saw a 39% or nearly virtually 40% growth of content and native investment spent by advertisers in comparable H1 2015 to 2016. We also saw a significant and serious growth in mobile video during that time. And so we see 129% growth in video, just 40% growth in content and native. Overall content and native is now accounting for 45% of mobile display. It really does look like the content and native formats are driving both mobile display on mobile as well as overall display. But we begin to look at what's happening with video. What's happening with video on this next slide, if I can get it to click through for me. And you see here that if we take away pre-post roll from the total spend of mobile video, that outstream and in-read, which are very similar formats to native in-feed, it's virtually half of all mobile video spend. And those kinds of video-based ads appearing with editorial scrolls are similar to some kinds of native distribution formats. So I just indicate where a lot of this growth is coming from, where it's driving from. So initiatives that are happening in the UK, the Content Native Council was set up at the very beginning of 2014. And one of the first tasks that the council took on, and is an ongoing task, was to create a framework to define what content-based advertising and native distribution units were, so that we could obviously measure it, as we've just discussed, but also use it as a basis for defining how we move forward with policy legislation, and particularly around disclosure and labelling. So it's very important we establish that. And this is our framework. It's downloadable from the IAB site, and you can see that we distinguish very much as Ireland does, very much as IAB Europe is, that there are ad formats, which we call native distribution ad units, and then there is publisher-advertiser partnerships, which produce content which generically we're calling publisher-hosted and/or made content, and how that divides down from a regulatory point of view. We constantly review this definition framework, and you can see here this is version 3, which we released in June of last year. And we know that we're still dealing with emerging formats, and that's why we have a framework for definitions to accommodate new formats, new approaches, new business models as they come out. That underpins essential work we did around labelling, but rather than simply taking the Advertising Standards Authority CAP code and producing some guidance for it to deliver to the industry to maintain compliance. We do have a very highly regulated advertising and media market here in the UK. We actually went out and we did some base consumer research to find out what their attitudes were to advertisers being part of their editorial environment, and what was their appetite for that, so that we could then wrap those research and wrap the guidance within those research findings. It's the first time we'd worked in a joint policy research piece in this way, and it was very successful because it was that in-depth qualitative work that drove us towards the basic guidance, which is so much of what people interact with in digital, whether it's mobile or desktop, is driven by their visual response to it. So visual cues, as opposed to the actual language of the label that sits on a paid ad unit or a piece of content marketing within the publisher's side, is not more important, but it's the first thing that triggers a response and a point of understanding with an audience member. So it's the visual cue plus the label description, which can vary dependent on the kind of publication that is running it. Plus, particularly in cases in feed units, a clear visual demarcation through lines and background shading and so forth. So again, that research is available to download from the IAB website, together with our guidance products, which we have set and we continually update. So the native format disclosure guidelines, one, deal with the native distribution ad units, and two, deal with advertiser-publisher partnerships, which are slightly more complex. A big piece of work that we began really 2 years ago was to look at measurement and how it was going to be possible to produce measures that were consistent across the market and enable brands to have conversations with publishers, with ad agencies, using common currencies, linguistic currencies, but also metrics currencies, so that there was a understanding of, one, what were the tradable metrics involved in this, and what were the evaluation metrics, because universally I think the industry agrees that impressions, clicks and views, or impressions, views and clicks are really not in and of themselves adequate measures of the kind of trade that goes on when a publisher partners with an advertiser and shares its audience with the advertiser. There are other values involved, and this is an ongoing conversation. And a lot of our members who are sitting on the Content and Native Council contributed to this discussion. If you have any interest in measurement, there is a whole plethora of opinions and points of view and case studies contained in this green paper that we published last summer. And that is also downloadable from the IAB website, and we will be carrying out a lot more publication work on that subject matter this year. We'll be running a seminar on it, and of course we'll be running our annual Content and Native Conference in June. It will be the 4th time we have run that particular conference. In a nutshell, that is the market state in the UK.
Thanks, Claire. That was a really clear outline of what's been happening in the UK, and certainly a lot of it from what was evident there. So now I'd like to move on and introduce Ludi Garcia from Spain, who's going to be talking about what's happening in Spain as regards native advertising and content marketing. Well, Ludi.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm sorry of saying that in Spain we are not in so advanced situation related to content and native advertising. In fact, we don't have figures in this moment to share with you. We expect to have it during this year. At the end of March, we are going to have the first digital ad spend report with native advertising figures. So now I only can share with you that it's a growing trend, not only native advertising, also content marketing and branded content are been using by advertisers because ad blocking solutions are used most of most by Spanish people. One of the first things we have done in the commission is change the name because last year we named branded content and native advertising commission, but in branded content are not included all content solutions. In fact, we have a debate in the commission. I belong to a PR agency. Some of my colleagues in the commission said that public relations are not branded content. So to include every kind of content developer, we have changed the name of the commission to Content and Native Advertising. One of our first projects during the last year has been to collect the information about our colleagues in other agencies and also in the advertisers. So we have organized the first Content and Native Advertising workshop during the beginning of this year. It was a great success for the IAB in Spain. We got the experience of B2B and business-to-consumer companies such as ING, Leroy Merlin, Movistar from Telefónica, Acciona, which is a B2B company, and most of the stories of these companies and case studies were focused on branded content because native advertising nowadays is not so used than branded content in our advertiser in our country. So next step are going to be trying to analyze new formats, also new standards in all these new kinds of content in Spain. And also we would like to work in transparency and ethics. This is something which is one of our key priorities in the commissions because the Spanish regulations, the institutions to control the advertisement in Spain are all institutions and don't have too much knowledge of new formats. So we are going to trying to be the owners of this role in our market nowadays. So as I said, the workshop was very successful. We got around 90 attendants from different kind of companies, advertisers, media, agencies. At the beginning of the workshop, some of companies, as I said, told us the best case studies in branded content, and later we organized different kind of working groups, share the opinion of these companies about the Spanish situation related to native and content in general. Going to be our next step. We would like to know what is the opinion of the internet users about the contents and strategy we're developing in our country. And with all these things, we expect at the end of the year have a white paper with the key trends, formats, etc. of content and native advertising in our country. And that's all at this moment. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Ludi. Let's move on to Finland, where we have Vera Sidanmaaka, who's chairman of the IAB Finland Native Advertising Task Force, and she's going to tell us about what's happening with native advertising in Finland. Welcome, Vera.
Thank you, Alison, and I have to say well done with my last name.
We've got some challenging names today.
So you did well, and thank you for having me here. It's an honor, really. So let's have a quick look at what's happening with Finland at the moment, and run through first couple of slides with ad spend numbers. So let's move on. So social media ad spending, I have to say that actually we're doing better thanks to the fact that we're climbing out of a recession. So good news for us. Last year, the total media ad spend increased 0.9%. So it was reaching 1.17 billion euros. As you can see, digital ad spend reached 1/3. And that growth, with digital ad spending, it was much stronger. So 12.6, see nearly double the growth if you compare previous year. The advertisers spent most on search and display, and with 2016 numbers, you can see clearly that the largest growth is with Facebook and mobile. So I think that is not surprising anyone at the moment. There is a survey suggesting this trend would continue in 2017 as well. More than 7 in 10 advertisers polled that would increase their investments in paid social media advertising and mobile marketing this year as well. This was a survey conducted by the Association of Finnish Advertisers. What is interesting, you can see that native is there included in the display section there. And why is that? It's just simply we just begun to collect native ad spend on its own, and no specific numbers there. But IAB Finland's estimate is that it is approximately 10% of the display ad spend, so would be around 9.2 million euros. I think it is just the beginning what we see here. Ad spend will be growing, and we know more end of this year, but definitely it is on the rise. It's something that is a topic as well. And what's delightful to see, it seems that display also gets a lift from native ads. Quickly, what's happening right now, as well with native, is borrowed, and the right media and brand match. Well, that's really the key to get best results. I think that is quite clear to us all. I just say that we have indeed survived the first shock waves with commercial content borrowing media space. That is something that has been a lot of discussion here. But now we learn how to perform better and how to measure in order to mirror the objectives set, because we don't want to end up with just clickbait. That is not what we want to do. We want to do better and, create better content and solutions. The engagement rates high. Also in Finland, there are many regulations set by a variety of authorities. Council for Mass Media, for instance, Finnish Competition and Consumer Authority, just to mention a few. They have been active in taking part in marketing native advertising, and I see that there's for IAB Finland to find these markings, and we have made a publication to set these markings, but I think there's still lots to do to unify these. But we're working on it. And what comes to trends, they lie in somewhat where anyone else too. We see the rise of videos, also programmatic native, mobile. That is definitely one, as we already saw earlier. And I think what's most important is the content that we produce and do. So it's also on our list. So that's just going through it quickly. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those too.
First, Vera, that's super. Thank you. So with that, I would like to introduce the last speaker for today, who I haven't had a chance to practice, as we're very lucky that he's in today to talk about Turkey. So it's Ömer Özener. I hope I've got that correct. And looking forward to hearing about the Turkish market. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone. And that was perfect pronunciation. My name and surname. Thanks for that. As all the markets, we obviously see an increase in native advertising and content marketing spend in Turkey. But overall numbers are still very small. If we look at the total advertising spending in Turkey, what we see is at the moment digital ad spending represents more than 25% of total advertising spending. And if we divide it per format, we see the biggest growth, of course, in video advertising and mobile advertising, whereas traditional, more desktop-focused display advertising is slowing down, actually in some cases even getting smaller. Whereas if you focus on native advertising and content marketing, what we see is there is no really a clear measurement in our market when it comes to native advertising and content marketing, and that's also an effort we would like to focus more in the future to bring more numbers when it comes to native advertising and content marketing spending in Turkey. Focus more on the numbers before starting to give you a general idea about the market size. Turkey is a very young and dynamic population, and if you look at especially the number of mobile users and especially mobile social users, it's showing still a huge growth. Now we are talking about more than 42 million mobile social users, and which represents more than 50% of the penetration. And most of the internet users now we see on mobile social. So media especially is very active in Turkey. It's one of the biggest markets when it comes to Facebook or other social media penetration. We have more than 48 million active social media users. This, of course, affects the use of web traffic more on mobile devices. What we see is desktop devices are shrinking rapidly in terms of web traffic in Turkey. The year-on-year trend, what we see is in 2016, we see almost 30% decrease in desktop web traffic, which also has a huge impact on display formats, which is more common on desktop devices. Whereas we look at mobile phones, we see a big increase there, and now more than 60% of traffic actually comes on mobile devices. And some publishers, more digital-first publishers, can see these numbers up to 80%, 85%. So in a nutshell, Turkey is a social media and mobile dominated market. It also has a big impact on the display advertising, mobile advertising area. What we see is, of course, another impact is on video, because as you all know, now most of the social media platforms are more to put more focus on video. That's what we see on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat are already video platforms. And what we see is and now brands are increasing their spending on video formats heavily. This is, of course, more on standard video formats like prayers or proceedings, but we see more and more the usage of native video also in our market. Just to give you an idea about, in general, adoption among publishers, in our markets, native advertising and content marketing is actually pioneered by digital-first publishers instead of traditional publishers. But also the traditional publishers later followed on. We see some of the traditional media companies also launching their own content marketing studios. However, the domination is still there in the digital-first companies which were earlier in the market to provide content marketing and native advertising opportunities for brands. Well, we have here the global figures, as I said, in terms of how much the revenue the publishers make from native advertising. We see that it's an increasing trend in Turkey, but unfortunately, we don't have exact numbers to track the native advertising and content marketing revenue here. I think what we see in our market is in terms of native advertising, what I mean is more like content recommendation networks like Tala, Outbrain, Ligatus, or local versions of it. We see most of the publishers now adopt these formats. However, in our market, we see a huge gap in terms of driving quality content by using these recommendation networks. So there's a big demand, I think, for the distribution side of native advertising now that the market is quite saturated. But when we look at do we have enough high-quality content to drive engagement via these native advertising networks, the answer is actually no. We see that the content creation is an issue. We see that the content distributed via these native advertising platforms are still not very high quality to drive enough engagement for the brands and at the end bring better results for brands. That's why that creates a pressure on the rates, unit rates, that creates a pressure on the brands to increase their spending enough, and that's a problem both on the publisher side and the brand side, I would say, and that's limited the high growth of native advertising, in our opinion. Of course, but a lot of publishers, and both publishers and brands see both advertising and content marketing is a big opportunity, and as I said, making investments both on the brand side and publisher side here. In Turkey, it's still in digital is still high growth market in Turkey, and if we focus on native advertising, it's even bigger opportunity. We would say. Well, we also, some publishers have some more innovative approach. I won't go deeper into these parts. I would be happy to answer your questions if you would like to hear more about specific details about content marketing and native advertising in Turkey.
That's Ömer. Right, so we're now going to open up for Q&A. Okay, so I'd just like to say before we do that, we've had an awful lot of questions coming through asking for the slides. So I just want to let everybody know that the slides will be on our website shortly. And hopefully you'll get some further information about that after the event. So everybody, for all the questions that you've sent through, and thanks for asking for that content. So firstly, to Claire, I'd like to ask how you see native advertising evolving in the UK market do you think it's going to continue to take such a large share of display advertising?
On mute, Alison. Right.
Sorry, did you hear the question?
Yes, yes. Yes, you couldn't hear me either. Yes, I think we will continue to see growth in content-based and native advertising, and we will continue to see growth across display advertising, because I think that a lot of the function of content and native is helping digital be a platform for brands to engage with customers in a way that possibly earlier iterations of display advertising didn't. So there's probably two things at play here, that a lot of ad units and the range and the development and the power of the technology behind those, and allowing ads to appear within editorial environments which are distinctly advertising as well, and making advertising just fit, just be a good, normal, high quality part of consuming other forms of content, is going to really be a massive boost for that display spend. I think that perhaps in a few years we will be talking less about content-based and native advertising, and we'll be talking about, a very buoyant market for display, and we will clearly be talking about a very buoyant market for advertiser-publisher partnerships to create content that people really want to engage with, because digital is an access medium. It is not a distribution medium in the way that newsprint was or television.
Thanks. That's really interesting. And just moving on to Ludi and Maeve, they were talking very much about the workshops and the grassroots activity that they've been doing in their markets to drive interest and uptake of native. So Ludi, do you think that it's been more the advertiser side or the publisher side that's been driving the uptake of native advertising in Spain? Which do you think has come first, or do you think it's a combination of the two? If we don't have Ludi, maybe Maeve can jump in on that.
It's probably a combination of the two. It's a combination of what else is happening around display advertising and other advertising formats. As I said here, I suppose we're quite lucky here in that we're quite a small market. We can do events, we can bring people together quite easily, and as I said, our publishers really are very well set up now to collaborate and to work on, be it having video studios, audio studios, whatever it happens to be, or creative teams. They have invested and they are helping and they are bringing others through this. We're sharing a lot of case studies. We're always looking for Irish case studies. We're not as good at sharing case studies sometimes in Ireland as other markets, but we're always pushing for that, and that really helps to influence it. We need to have the measurement side of things here a little bit and help brands to measure it better. But probably say publishers driving it more, but a mix of the two. Really helps.
Yeah, best practice is really important, and just while we're on that point, I'd just like to mention the IAB Europe Mix Awards that are coming up. So there's nothing like flying our own flag for the awards and our conference coming up in May. But just to make sure everybody's aware, the Mix Awards are open now. They have a native advertising category in there. So if anybody does have best practice cases that have won an award in a local market, you're very free to enter those into the Mix Awards Europe. We'd be really pleased to see those. And there's a slide just at the end of this presentation giving you more information about that. So I think we're actually running out of time. So apologies to Vera and to Omer, but I think we're going to have to close there now. So I'm just going to say a couple of words to wrap up about our next steps. So we'll be sharing the webinar recording on our website in the next couple of days. You can register the next webinar in the series. So the last one is on key operational considerations for native advertising and content marketing, and you can provide your feedback in the survey at the end of this webinar. Don't forget to download the IAB Europe Native Advertising White Paper. I think we've mentioned that several times today. And if you want more information about getting involved, both in the IAB Europe Native Advertising Task Force and in the task forces that have been talked about today in the local market, then hesitate to let us know and we will direct your inquiry accordingly. So last of all, just on Interact, as I mentioned earlier, of course, native advertising will be on the menu there. There's an early bird rate for tickets at the moment, and as you can see, the categories for the Mix Awards are lined up there for you. So thanks very much for your attendance today. Thanks very much to our speakers, Maeve, Claire, Ludi, Vera and Omer. Really interesting presentations. And thanks to everybody for coming together and creating another interesting webinar for IAB Europe. Thank you. Bye.